Hello friends, today we'll be discussing one of the most important features of any programming language, that is function. Function is very crucial thing, especially in programming languages like C and C++. Now what is a function? A function is a block of code which performs a specific task. Here we have defined a function. Let us see the definition. A function is a group of statements that performs a specific task. A block of statement or a group of statement which performs a particular task. Every C program has at least one function, which is the main function. You see, function and method, they are synonymous. In languages like Java, method is used. The term method is very popular. In C, we use function. C, C++, these are all function-based language. At least there will be one function, the main function. Without main function, there cannot be any program. So how can we define a function? A function is a group of statements that performs a specific task. Every C program has at least one function, which is the main functions. Now the question is, what are the features of functions? Let us study here. Here some features are mentioned. I will try to explain it. First, every C program has a function called main. Now main is the most important function in any programming language. All right. Whenever you write a program, the first thing which is executed is main. Compilation takes from top to bottom, but execution starts from main. The order in which the program is written in main will be the order in which the program will be executed. Even if we have function written before the main function, they will not be executed. They will be executed only when it is called from the main. So every C program has a function called main. Every function has a return type. In C, every function has a return type. If it doesn't return anything, we have to play void before the function name. However, return type is there. Later on, when we study C++, we'll find that there is a function which is known as constructor. It doesn't have a return type. But in case of C, every function should have a return type. If nothing else is written, at least void should be placed before the name of the function. If a function doesn't return any value, then void is used as a return type. Only constructor, which is used in OOPS-based programming languages, doesn't have a return type. Now question is, what type of data can C return? There is no restriction on what type of data C can return. In C, function can return any data type. There is no any hard and fast rule that this particular data has to be returned. Empty parenthesis in C means that parameter list is not specified. But sometimes function doesn't accept any argument. So in that case, empty parameters are left empty. All right, only parentheses are given. So if there are empty parameters in function, it can be invoked just by calling the function name. So till now we have studied the definition of functions and some of the features of functions. Now what are some of the advantages of function? Why exactly we use function? What are some of the merits of function? The first and foremost merit of function is reusability of code. If we use function, we can reuse the code any number of times. By using functions, we can avoid rewriting same logic or code again and again in a program. Suppose we have written function of 10 lines, and suppose we have written a function for square root, which calculates square root in 10 lines. Now suppose we are using that square root function 5 times. Without function, we have to write 10 lines 5 times. That means in total there would have been 50 lines. But if we use function, then 5 lines will be used for function call and 10 lines for defining the function. So in 15 lines, the whole thing will be completed. So by using function, we can avoid rewriting the same logic or code again and again. We can call C function any number of times in a program. There is no restriction how many times a function can be called. Function can be called from any place in the program and any number of times. We can track a large C program easily when it is divided into multiple functions. This is one of the most important features of functions. If we write monolithic programs like we used to do in BASIC, then it would become unmanageable after a certain length. So what happens? Large programs are divided into functions, and then functions are easily created. By using this modular technique, we can make the program much more simpler and much more easy to develop that program. Reusability is the main use of C function. That means the main purpose of using C function is reusability of code. We can use the same code again and again. So reusability of code is one of the chief functions of C functions. But does function have some disadvantage? Obviously, it has some disadvantage. One crucial disadvantage of C function is it slows down the whole system. Now, if we use a function, what happens? The function will be invoked. Now, internally, stack concept is used for invoking functions. Now, the more time we use function, the more time memory will be referred. We know that computer memory works at slower speed than the microprocessor. So each time the RAM is accessed, the things will become slower. Because the RAM works at much less speed than the microprocessor. So when a function is called, the program control gets transferred to the beginning of the function, and when the function completes, the program control goes back to the calling function. So in this whole process, stack concept is used, and thus the thing becomes slower. Now next question is, what are some of the types of functions? Now functions are of different types. Let us study them. First, library functions. Library functions are those functions which are inbuilt in a programming language. Printf, scanf, these functions are not created by us. They are predefined in the C programming language. So they are called library functions or built-in functions. But there are functions which we will create in our programs. The functions which are created by the programmer is known as user-defined function. There are hundreds of library functions. So we have to know their use. And user-defined function, the programmer has to develop his or her own functions. Now, what are some of the parts of functions? The function has three parts: function declaration, function definition, and function call. The complete operation of function will require these three things. There has to be function declaration, then definition, and call. Now, question is, what is function declaration? A function declaration consists of function's name, return type, and input parameters. First, we have to write the return type. If nothing is returned, void is used. Then we have to write the name of the function, which can be anything but should be meaningful. Then we have to give the parameter list. That means the arguments which the function will accept. This is the whole syntax of the function. Followed by this is the body of the function. Followed by this is the body of the function. The parameter list can have only data types. Means while declaring a variable, we need not mention the variable. We simply have to give the data type. We may or we may not give the name of the variable. That is optional. A function definition provides the actual body of the function. Now, where we define the function? Definition in function declaration, there is only return type, function name, and the argument list. But in function definition, we have to provide the body also. And here is given the syntax of the function. First, there is the return type, followed by the function name and the parameter list. Then there is the body of the functions. Return type, what does return type signifies? Return type, a function may return something or it may not return a value. All right. If function does not return value, then we have to place void before the name of the function. Similarly, function name. Every function should have a name. We don't have anonymous functions in C. In languages like Python, we have concept like lambda functions, but here we are not using any anonymous function, though nothing is impossible in C. In C, programming language is such a great language that nothing is impossible. Things which are not, features which are not available can also be done in roundabout ways. Parameters. Parameter list. The parameter list refers to the type, order, and number of parameter a function accepts. A function may accept. First, we have to mention the different variables. Then we have to mention the data type and the order. Order is important because in C, all the functions calls are positional. That means all the arguments which are passed are positional. That means first variable will be transferred in the the first actual variable will be transferred in the first formal variable. There is no concept of key, which we find in languages like Python. That means only the parameter will be passed in the positional way. So we have to maintain the order of the parameters. The order of the parameters, the type of the parameter, and the variable names has to be properly given. Otherwise, there will be no function call and we shall get an error. And ultimately, there is the body of the function, which may contain one statement or it may contain more statements. Next is the concept of call. You see, we may write a function in main, but it will not get executed until and unless it is invoked from somewhere. Ideally, a function is generally invoked from the main, but it is also possible that one function can be invoked from the body of another function. That is also possible. So until a function is invoked, it will not perform any task. Means to call a function, we have to use the function name and the required parameter. Unless we use a function and unless we use the function name and provide the requisite parameter, the function will not get invoked. When a function calls a function, the program, now what happens when a function is called? When a function calls a function, the program control is transferred to the function call, to the called function. As I was saying previously, when we invoke a function by placing the function name and providing the required parameter, program control will transfer to the location where the function has been written, and then the body of the function is executed. And after executing the body of the function, the program is transferred back to the calling function, which is the main function in this particular case. Now there are two types of functions call. All right, function call can be of two types. What are two types of function calls? Functions calls, we can two types of functions call is call by value and call by reference. Now what is call by value? Now while calling call by value concept, we pass the primitive data types. We pass the value. All right. This method copies the actual parameter of an argument in the formal parameter. Now, what is actual parameter? While the parameter which are passed, the parameters which are provided during the function call is the actual parameter, and the parameter mentioned in the function definition is the formal parameter. The actual parameter should match with the formal parameter in position, in type. Position should also match and type should also match. And number of parameters should also match. Now in call by value, the values are passed. That means not the reference, not the address. The value of the actual parameter is transferred into the formal parameter. So what happens? Because of this, any changes made in the function. All right? Because of this, any changes made in the function is local to that function. It will not be reflected into the main function. All right. In call by value, the changes which is made in the function will be local to that function. That means if we come back to the calling function and print the changes, will not get that changes because that changes were limited to the function itself. But in call by reference, where we pass the address of the variable instead of the value, the changes are permanent. All right. In call by reference, we pass address as the actual parameter, and it is received by pointers in formal parameter. And the changes which are made in that function will be reflected back to the calling function. So this is the concept of call by reference. in C, there is no such thing as call by reference. What we know as call by reference is actually call by address. We are passing the address and it is being received in pointer. We call it call by reference in C, but when dealing with C++, call by reference and call by address becomes two different things because there is a concept of reference variable. But that is not the case in C. By default, C uses call by value. All right? Call by value is the natural thing. All right. Parameter passings to functions. The parameter passed to a functions are called actual parameter, and parameter received by functions are called formal parameter. That we all know. The arguments which we pass while calling the function is known as actual parameter, and actual parameters are received where? They are received in the formal parameters. And where are formal parameter declared? In the function definition. Now there are two popular ways to pass parameter. One is the call by value and the call by reference. That we already studied, call by value and call by reference. So we need not have these two things. Significance of main functions. What are the significance of main functions? You see, the main function is a special function. Every C program must have a function named C, function named main. Not only C, C++, Java, most of these contemporary languages, they have the concept of function. It serves as the entry point for the program. That means when we run the program, it will start executing from the main. The computer will start running the code from the beginning of the main function. What are the types of main function? There are two types of main function. The first type is main function without parameters, and second type is main function with parameters. Now, this is the first video of the function. Later on, we will produce other videos where we will discuss all those critical concepts. That means argument passing to main, and we will try to explain all these concepts with functions. So do follow those videos. The first type is main function without parameter. That is main, which will not accept parameter, which is the most general concept which we use. And second type is main with argument. There we have to use command line argument. As I mentioned, we shall not be discussing those things. We shall discuss those things in our later videos. And in this video, we are just explaining the theoretical concept. Later on, we will demonstrate all these things using function. So look forward to those videos and try to see them. Return value. Every function, as I mentioned, should have a return value. C function may or may not return a value, but it should have a return type. If it doesn't return, void should be mentioned before the name of the function. All right. If you do not have any return, if you do not have to return any value from the function, use the void as the return type. So we have come to the end of this chapter. Do wait for the new videos. I hope you like this. Thank you.